All right, we are recording. So I guess the first thing is, it's always in order, is you should introduce yourself. And you can take as long as you want or as little either way.
Okay. I'm Janet Kira Lessin. I live in Maui, Hawaii. I was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in February 6, 1954. And in the 50s and 60s, Pittsburgh was a hotspot of UFO activity. And so I grew up as an active contact experiencer since the crib. I came in conscious. The ETs had to shut down the veil so I wouldn't remember too much, because I was talking at a very adult level with my mother, and it was freaking my mother out. And so my mother would periodically act out and be violent towards me because she thought she had given birth to the demon seed. And I'm sure she was, sensing these beings in her house. She was reacting. She said, "No, I can't compare notes with her." So I'm piecing it together through hypnosis and active memory, what I remember, and then I take an episode and I flesh it out. So my mother, she was probably one of the Illuminati princesses in the rituals, because she was always destabilized and nervous. She had to take a lot of medication, and I'm not sure exactly what was going on with her, but a lot of the housewives in that era were very hyperactive. So that's why that song came out about "Go Ask Alice when she's 10 feet tall," about taking mother's little helper. So she was one of those mothers that was medicated, trying to handle. She said, I have nerves. But as a child growing up in the house, I realized what was probably behind that is that there was a lot of paranormal activity. And so she didn't have anybody to talk to about it, and I was a child and I just experienced it. So the house was full of ghosts, interdimensionals, and extraterrestrials. So as a researcher now, in 50, 60 years later, I've had to figure out what was going on in my house, because I had disembodied heads, which I think some were extraterrestrial, and I was just seeing the faces with the big eyes, and some of them were actually humanoids, people who had lived before and passed on. So my house was a portal of activity. And then through hypnosis and memory, I've recalled that I, like many others, I came into the physical 3D realm as a volunteer to help accelerate consciousness on Earth, to help us learn, grow, evolve, and to survive these horrendous times that we're living through. Today is a fine example, pandemics, but there's earth changes and potential wars. So I've always been an activist, an anti-war activist, and I think that's because of my connection with extraterrestrials. So let me go into some of the particulars about my experiences. I don't know if you want me to go into the whole story right now, or do you want to ask questions? But I can, whatever you want me to do, I can do.
You can
What do you prefer?
Well, I'm not sure that I prefer anything other than going as deep as possible. And what I want out of this 2 hours is the best interview you've ever had. That's what I want. And you can go on and on as long as you want.
All right. So, let me go into, I have some notes on my story here. Hold on. I had a PowerPoint I did in a couple.
First question I have for you is, are you writing a book or have you written a book?
I have not written a comprehensive book on this experience of my life as an experiencer. I have the PowerPoint ready. When I go into writing it, I find myself feeling triggered, and so I haven't worked through all the issues. And so, I haven't quite got the whole story done. in a book form. But I do have it in PowerPoint in case I drop over dead tomorrow. Somebody could revive it and turn it into a book. But
how many races do you believe you're of? Doesn't matter, extraterrestrial, extra dimensional. To me, it's all the same. Anybody other than us. As far as extraterrestrials, extra dimensionals, whatever, anything that you would not call, say, a ghost or demon or anything like that. How many beings that you might call a race or have a name would you say that you've had experiences with over your lifetime? Ballpark figure.
Well, I was taken to a kind of like a United Nations meeting in a large arena, and I asked questions like, how many are here? They said there's 100,000 unique different species, and this is only a small representation of everything that exists in the universe. But we're bringing to you the ones that you can best relate to. So they tend to have eyes they have a face, they have eyes, they have a mouth, they may or may not have a nose, they have something like a hand that they use.
Bipeds.
And they tend to be bipedals, yes. Mm-hmm.
And okay, so your very first, if you go back to your earliest childhood that you remember, and it sounds like you remember from before you were born even, but your house that you were in, was it a positive house, a negative house, mixed? What kind of, how did it treat you, that totality of what was there with your mother?
Well, my father has suffered from PTSD, having been first in and last out in World War II. He was on the Italian front fighting Mussolini, and he helped to liberate the camps. So he saw firsthand how, these people were treated and how decimated they were, coming out in, skeletal. So he was very traumatized from that. My mother was, they met through letter writing. It was a very copper thing to do back then, write to somebody overseas at war. So they fell in love via letters. And when he got out, he said, "I'm coming home to marry you." So when he got out, he went right to see my mom. And for some reason, she was kind of infantilized and living with her mother and grandmother, and they had to sneak and run away and get married. I don't know what the whole dynamics that was about. But my mother was traumatized from having gone through the Depression. It was very difficult during the war. They were very poor. My mother's father had died when she was 10 years old. And so, her teen years and early 20s were very difficult. I'm not sure what kind of jobs they did. I think they took in laundry and I heard they made, not brassieres, what do they call those? They sewed some kind of undergarments that they sold. And, so they were just making ends meet barely. And so my mother was traumatized by, not having enough to eat. And so those things, made it a difficult life. And also she had all these experiences with the house. I would come into her bedroom. She was talking to her mother. By the time I was born, her mother had died. I mean, I could see her mother standing in the room, and she was kind of transparent. My mother would be talking to her, and I would catch her, and she'd get upset, and don't ever talk about that. She was very religious. She was Presbyterian, and she just thought that things were demonic. It really kind of fundamentalist, but the Presbyterian religion is like that. But she had like these fundamentalist beliefs early on. So that was the part that was traumatic for me, because there was no one to talk to about what I was experiencing. But go ahead, ask your question.
So your mother thought that her own mother was demonic?
Say that again. My mother what?
So your grandmother was coming in her afterlife to see your mother, correct?
Correct.
And your mother was so
and she would stand at the foot of my
she
bed.
believed, she believed her own mother was a demon and not a real mother?
No. She believed her mother was her mother, but she thought she would quote the Bible. She said, "Seeing ghosts is demonic. You can't be seeing ghosts, right?"
I
So she was conflicted.
I got it. So I was talking with Joe Montaldo. He's an ex-Christian, and he believes in demons and he believes in aliens, but he doesn't believe in ghosts. That's the Christian dogma that, when you die, you go into the grave, you cannot be roaming around. So that's where she got that from, obviously.
Right, and her mother not only would visit her, she would stand at the foot of my bed. I'd wake up because there were eyes on me. She would play the piano I got her bedroom. When she died, I got her bedroom. And that had been her mother's bedroom. So the house came into our family around 1901. And back in those days when people died, they didn't have a funeral home. They would just lay you out in your house. You would die in your house. People would come visit. So the number of my own family members had died in that house since 1901, including my mother's father, my mother's grandmother, and my mother's mother. And so I'm not sure which old lady it was that would stand at my foot of my bed or play the piano, but I did see some pictures of my mother, and I thought that was the person who was visiting, because when she died, I was in my mother's womb, and my mother did not get to tell her that she was pregnant with me for some reason. And so I think Grandma was curious about me. So I had to deal with that, but it wasn't like you could talk about it with people back in that Christian world because of that belief that was a, horrendous thing to believe. That was, the dead can't be walking. But I knew what was going on, even as a child.
So as a child, you had more paranormal experiences than the alien, correct?
No, I also had the aliens. I realized, well, first of all, when I came in, I remembered where I was. I remembered adapting to the body. I would think in full adult conversation. When I was 4, I was taken on board. I was out in the yard playing. It was spring. There were these little buttercup flowers, and I was singing all these songs. I had discovered the concept of God. See, I was trying to rectify all this stuff in my mind. And, it's God, okay? Because I was getting these visitations. And so suddenly, when I was coming into the house with a bunch of buttercups I had made into a little bouquet, I was instantly teleported to the mothership, which was way up in the sky and above the clouds. And I was taken on a tour. I was welcomed like I was a returning royalty or something, a princess. And what they do is they construct things for our convenience. So since I was in a human form, they gave me things that I could wrap my head around. So they took me to a theater. Before, I had never been to a movie theater yet. Back in the 50s, parents didn't take you until you were a little bit older, so you wouldn't be a screaming baby at the theater. So I hadn't yet been to a movie theater, and they took me to a theater, and there was a screen like in Star Trek, but Star Trek, this was 58, so Star Trek didn't come around until 8, 9 years later. And so I sat in the, kind of front seat middle, and they started to show different images on a screen, but it was also projected into my mind's eyes, and I could feel, hear it, feel it, everything was happening, transpiring. So they showed me the earth blowing up. That was the first image, and I was just shocked because I was in my eternal self. I wasn't like my human self. I had my awareness of my eternal existence, right? So I was like an adult, a full conscious sentient being, but I was at the same time this little girl that was 4 years old. So they were related to me on that level, on both levels. So they showed me the earth blowing up, and I knew it was the earth. And then they showed me 24 different potential realities where we could go, like timelines, dimensions, and they went from that most horrendous one when we blew up, but the next scene was the Earth was whole, but there was a lot of destruction, and the scenes would just kind of fade one after the other into each other. They kept going, and so they were better and better realities until they went over to the 24th one was total utopia. But then they stopped all the images. By that time, I was sobbing. Tears were just going down my eyes. It was very emotional. I mean, I would see things like animals dying and, things burning up and volcanoes. It was like everything was running through like this mind's eye, plus images on this screen. It was very overwhelming. But finally they stopped the images coming and they gave me a moment of silence, and then they said, which reality would you like to choose? Which multiverse would you like to have as your own? And then I thought about it, and I said, well, the third one from the very end, not total utopia because there'd be nothing left to do. Oh, I didn't want to be too utopian because I wanted something to do. I said, so the third one from the end, with the end being total utopia, would probably be enough to do to make a life existing, exciting, interesting, and give you stuff to do, right? And so when I chose that, it was probably some kind of beaming technology, because I'm back into my body on Earth. I don't know if I was physically taken, but what I found to be curious is I was stepping over this little really tiny, like 1 foot fence. I was stepping over to go back into the house, and I'm 4 years old, and I still have my posy. So I'm returned where I left. I don't know if they time traveled me back. I don't have the physics of what had happened, just the experience describing it, right? From working with the super soldiers, they say they get time traveled back to where they left. So probably they time traveled me back to where I left, and I was literally in mid-step, and so I put my foot down, and when originally taken, the sun was like high noon, very high in the sky, but when I was taken back, the sunset was setting. And so I've still been trying to figure out what exactly happened. So the sun was setting, and then they kept communication with me because it's all telepathic, right? And they said, you have come here to do something which will benefit all of humankind. Now, studying experiencers, they're told you're special. So that was you're special talk that they give us. And so I've always felt chosen, like I was chosen. And but I had this awareness that there's no way I can go in and tell my parents. I had an older brother, an older sister. It's like, no, you can't tell those people what happened. But I never forgot. I remember every detail. I've never had to be hypnotized to recall this. I had full awareness of that episode. So that's when I was 4. Before that, when I was about, when you're a baby, you don't really understand time, right? You don't get up in the morning and look at the calendar, look at the clock. So
Sure.
I didn't have awareness of how old I was, but I was probably somewhere between a year and 18 months. I remember one night I was in my crib, so I was pretty young, and I woke up to all these beings in my bedroom, and I had the biggest room in the house, but they weren't really they were kind of interdimensional, right? And they kept coming one after the other in front of me so I could look at them, and they kept rotating. This went on for a long period of time, and I would look into their eyes, and when you look into somebody's eyes, you can see into their souls. So I saw all these different beings, and some of them I could describe them as, they were dog-like or cat-like or humanoid-like or reptilian-like or insectoid or whatever. But some that I couldn't even identify them because I'd never seen an animal that looked like them. I couldn't say it was bear-like because I didn't. These are probably animal species that are different. But once again, they were, a face. They were sentient, conscious. They could speak telepathically or use their mouths if they had them. But they were all speaking to me telepathically, and they were saying goodbye. And so once again, I was crying. And then finally, the last one came in front of me, and he said, "It's time to go be human." And at that point, there was this loud, like a crack of thunder, but it was like the dimensions were closing or something. It was like they were forcing them closed, and the force of it cracked it. And then I started, the sound of it just startled me. It was louder than anything. It was not just a sound loud. It was like a shock. It was like a disconnect. And so I just started crying, and my mother came in from the other room, and up until that point, I was able to speak. I started talking very, very young, which was part of what freaked her out. I remember thinking in adult thoughts and then trying to speak it through a mouth that the sounds only came out like a baby. But at that point, I could no longer do sentences. I had kind of regressed in my abilities to speak because they had disconnected. They babbled my speech, so I would be a normal baby, right? And my mother saying, "What's wrong?" And I couldn't get it into words. I would think it, but it wasn't coming out of my mouth. So that was somewhere between 12 months and 18 months old. And then before that, I used to fly around the room. And I know that sounds crazy, but, when we have our full abilities, we can levitate. So my mother wasn't around, and I would be in my crib, my mother put the crib in the dining room, and then she went into the kitchen and did laundry. She had one of those old sink, you rolled it up to the sink with the roller. That's how she did her laundry. So she's in there doing this laundry, and I'm in my crib, and I entertained myself by zooming around the room, and I'd plop back into my crib. But I started laughing. It was so fun. And my mother came in, caught me as I plopped into my crib, and she totally freaked out, because she had thought she'd given birth to the demon seed. And so I never did that again. But years later at a conference, somebody came up and said, "I remember levitating." And he said, "If anybody else in this room remembers, come and meet me in the back room by the clock," or something. And so I went back there, and there was about a dozen people, and we remembered levitating. But there was always some traumatic experience that shut us down, somebody's reaction, so we kind of just stopped thinking about it. And over time, you begin to doubt things as being real when it doesn't get reinforced. That's one of the strategies they use in the military, like with Clifford Stone. And when he was in a rescue team that took care of the ETs that were injured in crashes, after about a year or two of working together, the military just split them up. And then it's like, was that real? After 10, 20 years goes by, did I really do that? Because you don't get it reinforced by people saying, yeah, remember this, remember that. So anyway, so I had that experience. And then even before that, I just totally remembered, like, I've got to stop this body from peeing and pooping. What can I do to get control of that? So I potty trained myself very, very early on because I thought it was disgusting. Being in this form that it had to poop and pee. So I've always had these memories of those type of things.
Well, I've heard you talk about the where you got to choose which reality we were going to have. I've heard you talk about that before.
Okay.
Why do you think they gave you all those choices? What was do you think they just wanted to understand how humans think, or do you think they had some ability to actually switch the timeline in real life?
That's a good question. Because I was asking it's like you're asking me to set the timeline. I think we can all set our timelines. So just think of it. If these timelines always exist and we are constantly the chooser about which timeline to go down, then we're never a victim. So if we're experiencing COVID, whatever your reality is, on some level you're choosing it, but it also means you can change it. I think they were teaching me about how to manipulate time, about consciousness and the how it functions and works. I think they were teaching me that, but then I have agreed to come into this experience, so I came in, I agreed to participate in the matrix, in the simulation. We're in a simulation, right? So I've agreed to go into it fully. So I guess I was resisting it, and they were trying to help me to integrate into the simulation to fully experience it, and so that was an educational opportunity. So what happened was I did choose that timeline, and then later in 1963, with the continuation of the Philadelphia experiment at Montauk, they changed the timeline to the one where Kennedy and Martin Luther and all those, Lenin and everybody got assassinated. So we were on it, or at least I was on a different trajectory, a different timeline, and now I guess I've agreed to be in this one because here I am talking to you. So I think it was just not victims, yeah.
It sounds like what they were doing had many different reasons for them doing it.
Many, yeah.
So, if you had to guess, ballpark figure, how many times you've had an encounter with either an extraterrestrial or some type of multidimensional being within your lifespan, how many times would you guess? 1,000, 10,000, 200? How many times do you think?
I have constant contact. It's just my level of awareness and focus on it. So throughout my childhood, always showing up in the sky. Yeah, go ahead.
So tell me, you're in constant contact. Okay. I'm not going to take you in a different direction. I'm going to take you in the direction you're already going in. So if you're in constant contact, tell me about how that feels in real life. Right this very moment, if you're in contact, how does that feel? How are you aware of that contact in this very moment, right now?
Well, I always feel protected, loved. When I feel stress, being a human, it's comforting. At night, I have a greater awareness of my multidimensional self. We are multidimensional beings simultaneously existing on many. We think of things in linear time, but time is not linear. So we have incarnations on other planets, other dimensions, other vibratory frequencies, and we're simultaneously existing in all those levels. And it's a matter of focus and intention. So you can meditate and access your other aspects of yourself, and you can go all the way from the lowest third dimensional vibratory frequency, and all the beings are in this sphere, and the ETs around here, all the way up to universal consciousness and oneness in God's self. It's a matter of focus and intentions. So if I go into prayer meditation, I can contact what we might call God self. At night, I go and I have other jobs, other existences. I go to what I call Nibiru and other planets. I don't even have them named, and it's like I know where my apartment is and how we travel. We travel differently. Sometimes it's just by our feet, and we're somehow floating, but we can get all the way across the city in 5 minutes. There's no need for cars, and I have a job. I go to my office. I have other people and other beings I interact with. I tend to go to the humanoid species, planets, and realms, but I've also been a being that flies. I've been a being that's in the oceans. So there's the awareness. Now, the ego, Janet, doesn't seem to have the ability to say, I want to go to the planet where I'm an aquatic being tonight. But when it's appropriate for what I, Janet, the human, need to experience, I find myself in those experiences. And I also go to the past and the future. So one time, I was really, suddenly I was exhausted, and my guide said, go to bed. We're trying to contact you. So I went and I fell into a dream state, and I found myself right down the road from my house in the future. And there was this giant tower that was like 7 miles high, and I could stand at the foot, but I could also fly and see. And it operated on thermals. I wish I could draw this and translate this to an engineer or something. But up high, it had these flaps, and they could just keep turning from the slightest thermals at the top, and it kept doing like a wheel or some kind of energy system. By the time it got to the bottom, it was generating enough electricity for the entire planet. And I said, oh, that's what Richard Hoagland found on the moon. Richard Hoagland showed in his video in the 80s or something, the towers, the giant 7-mile high towers, and I was being shown that, and it was here, right here on the island of Maui, one of these towers. So I'm not sure why these things happen. I just kind of note them, and they, it all makes sense, and I go, okay, there's some kind of better energy system than this, what we're doing now to the planet. So gives me hope and inspiration, so I can get up and do this life, and I do the shows like you do, and I keep connecting the dots and assembling the puzzle. So I feel really good when I have contact. Many times they're doing healing. I'm in an old body now. I'm 66, and I'll be aware that it's like number 7 of 9 in Voyager. She would go into the rejuvenation cell, and she'd come out all charged. Yeah, I'm aware that they're regenerating me, keeping this car working well so I can keep functioning.
Wow, you caught me off guard there. I'm trying to think of what to ask you next. So which of all the types of beings that you're in contact with, which ones do you think you have more contact with? Would it be extraterrestrials or multidimensionals? I know we are multidimensional. I don't mean to say we're not. I'm just saying, obviously, they're higher level beings. But which entities of any kind do you think you have more contact than, is there one that kind of stands out that you've had more contact with?
Well, I've had a lot of contact with the Greys, the Anunnaki, the reptilians. I've met the dragon, the mother dragon,
right.
When I was on Johnson Atoll, and let me see what else. The mantis, they're very kind and loving, like a mother. I met a mother mantis, and she was so tall. I was about 10 years old, but I was the size of an infant in her arms, and she just cradled me, and her energy was so soft, it was like I was being enveloped by a big cat, soft energy, and I just, she healed me from an incident that I had where a boy had molested me, and I was 10, and I was just totally traumatized, and she took me and she held me all night, and then I came back and I said, okay, I can do this. I can do human. I can do this life. Yeah. So it's interesting when you have that awareness that, you're in here on a mission. You've agreed to do this, and I'm going to fulfill my mission, and I've agreed to do this. Yeah. But I really identify with the Anunnaki, with especially the goddess Nima, who was the mother creator goddess, and I've been able to access her energy. I identify, maybe I'm a fractal of her. I think that people may be fractals of these giant souls that have lived in form for millions and millions of years. Apparently, according to the Emerald Tablets of Thought, they're able to send fractals of themselves into human form So if you have somebody that's like a Jesus, and you can access your Christic consciousness or the Buddha. So that's what they mean by getting your guiding myth, getting your archetype that you identify with, and you can embody that and live your days from those philosophies and keep up-leveling existence for yourself and everybody that you meet. So Nima was a high being that really loved humanity and loved everybody unconditionally, and all 7 billion of us are her children. So when I identify with Nima, I come into compassion, empathy for everybody on the planet and for the human experience and what it's like to be unconscious and in the veil and feeling like you're in opposition to people and that they're against you. And if we could just get out of this polarity dynamics, we could really, solve every problem and heal the planet. But right now we're in the middle of this, simulation game to experience being self-parent other. Mm-hmm.
So you said in your email that your husband was an authority on the Anunnaki, and you just stated that you were had a lot of affinity towards one of the Anunnaki in particular. Do you think that his understanding of them and your affinity with at least one of them had anything to do with your meeting him? But that y'all
yes. Yeah. I think that's what we may have our people who experience a lot of interactions with a particular species may in fact be their that soul essence, right? So I talked to Cindy Crawford before her passing, and she said that her dad was in the military, and before he passed, he confessed to her that she was a hybrid, but also that her soul was and I don't, forgive me, people who know Cindy's story, I haven't listened to it in several years. She's been gone for a while, but I can go listen to the archives. But I think she was she was a human soul and a reptilian and a mantis soul or a gray soul. She was a combination of 3 or 4 different soul groups into a human form that had different genetics that were from 3 or 4 different species, or maybe even more. And Simon Parkes from the UK talks about that as well. He's got 3 major soul groups that are in his current form that he identifies with. It's far more complicated than we could ever imagine, but if you can wrap your head around it, that you can be from more than one soul group, and you can be more than one genetics, DNA from more than one species, then you kind of are getting what's going on with creation, what's really going on.
So we're essentially a bunch of mutts.
It might be they're making the best of each one.
You know what I'm saying, right? A dog.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so we got a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of the other thing.
Yes, and I don't know if that's everybody or just some of us, and our souls can be young souls and old souls, and we can be in different bodies on the same planet, which is really mind-boggling. You can meet yourself. You can have sex with yourself, literally, but it's in a different body. It's just far more complicated than we ever imagined. I guess most people can't, wrap their heads around it. So we keep it simple.
When are you going to finish your book?
I was thinking of I do four shows a week, and it's getting to be a bit much. So I'm thinking I'm going to back off on the amount of shows I'm doing, because I really feel an urgency to, wake up humanity and help us get through COVID. But I need to do that. And I was just thinking that the past few days, it's like I've got to just tell some of my co-hosts, take it and do it yourself, or I'll be back in a couple of months. Because I think it would really just take me about a month to get it written in, another maybe couple of weeks to format it, and then I can start doing that level, because it really needs to be told It's a very complex story. Did you hear my story about Johnson Atoll before?
I did. And,
Yeah.
when was the last time you were physically taken anywhere?
See, that's what's really hard as the person that's having the experiences is you don't know if you're physically taken or you're astrally taken. But what I do know is that there's, it's very hard for the human form to, be in space a lot. But I can tell if I'm really there because I can feel the sun shining on my face or the wind blowing. So I am physically going, or at least in some body form that can feel the environment. So at least once a week I go to some other planet somewhere.
So what you're saying is that if they take you astrally, it's really hard to tell that you're in astral because it's so real. It's just like you were physically there.
Yeah, we think this Earth plane is real, right? So how do we know that we're really here? We could be in a simulation. So that's a really good question. How do you know what's real? How do you know what's a simulation? Sometimes I come back with physical markings. So I think that was a physical experience. I don't get a lot of the poking and prodding like the younger people do. I was in the breeding program for years. They've taken my DNA. They've taken a lot of eggs. When I was younger, they would encourage me to be promiscuous, which I resisted because I was raised Christian, and I said, no, I'm not doing that. But they liked it when I would mix up my body fluids with other, because they can harvest, the sperm and all that stuff from your vaginal, area. I mean, they love it. They love it. They love it when you diversify your DNA. So, but if you don't do it, they'll do it for you. So they made me aware at one point that, once they get your DNA, you could have millions of offspring. It's not limited. They've got your genetic material. So we think in terms of, get abducted, they put a baby in you, they take it off, they want you to nurture it. It's like, I've been shown my children, many children. My children are all humanoid, and I don't think they're really a pure gray and human. It's like they mix it. I'm in a different category, and I don't know what that means. That's all I know is like I go, well, what's with my children? They're not the little gray babies. They're not that. Some of my girlfriends have reptilian babies. They go, no, everybody's like in a category. They have you different experiments, and so I go, okay, that's fine. Show me my kids, but I haven't seen very many of them. I'm just aware that they exist and that someday, everybody will be reunited. But right now we're having these experiences, and they feel separate, so we can be in the now. Here now, be totally immersed in experience and pay attention to what's going on each day. When you are somewhere, be there fully and pay attention. That's kind of the basic message.
So do you get any idea, previously you mentioned about the time where you were taken to like a United Nations type thing where it was hundreds of thousands of beings. Can you speak a little bit about the hierarchy of who's in control of, not necessarily what's going on Earth, but at least this part of the universe or this galaxy or the universe in general, or some type of understanding of the hierarchy of, like I'm going to give you an example before you jump in.
Okay.
Okay. So I was talking to Joe Montaldo, and he's kind of along the lines of the Greys are running everything, and they're the most powerful, and nobody can tell them no, or nobody's equal or more powerful, whatever. And I keep trying to tell him he's full of it, because that's not, that there's some truth to that, but not as much as he thinks. And so he's an extremely knowledgeable abductee, and it's kind of hard for me to tell him he's not exactly correct. So I'd like to get your take on federations or most powerful, or how the hierarchy of things, at least, in the physical realm at this level.
Okay. The Federation is very accurate. I was involved with the Star Trek movements beginning when I was 12 years old. It was like a homecoming, so that part is very accurate. We're in a section of the existence, this is called, maybe the universe, which is a simulation game, right? And so we have these 3D beings, and they have hierarchy there. But when you're outside of the level, we are in unity consciousness and oneness. Now, the meeting I went to, the facility was this arena that was very tall. There were seats. I was down below in the bottom, and I could look up, and I saw seats around me 360, and I could see the whole arena was full, and there were beings in each seat. And when they would speak, a light would go on them, and then a projection of that being would stand right before me. So it was like I was having a personal conversation, but everybody in the chairs, in their seats, could witness me having a personal conversation with the person who was asking me questions. There was a DS with three. They were they kind of look like pigs or hogs, but everybody's beautiful in their own way. And they were the ones that were mediating the meeting, and they were asking me what it was like to be a human on Earth in the 21st century. And I basically said, help, we need intervention. I know about the non-interference clause, and this isn't working. We really need intervention. So they were taking it under consideration, and I think they said yes, they were going to start intervening on a greater level. And that was about 5 to 10 years ago this meeting was. So we do have the Federation. We have the secret space program. There are different species that are interacting with humans. Are they in a hierarchy? I'd say on the Earth, the top one are the Anunnaki, and they still rule. And that's why we focus a lot of attention on them. The Greys are the delivery system. When I was on Johnson Atoll, they came and picked me up. They picked up my boyfriend, and they returned us. Now, I was met at the UFO Congress in I think it was 2016 or 2017. The Grey that had carried me, that I spoke with when he was carrying me on Johnson Atoll, he said, I came to say goodbye. Basically, they were going on past this physical dimension. So he said, where I'm going is more like where you would call dead, but we're not dead because there is no death, but I'm going into a different dimension. And he said, I won't be back. I'm saying goodbye. You won't see me until you're out of this existence. And so we were crying, because between all of us, there's this divine love. You might have your dynamics where you think that that's your enemy, or you're afraid of them, or whatever. But on the highest level, we are one in divine love. So he was going out of he was removing himself from the simulation. But I don't think the Greys are in control. I've talked to the Greys. I have people that have been part of Roswell, and they've been on board the ship, and they're not just as a abductee, but as a Grey. Some people go up on ship and they're in their other form, and some people are Greys. So I've talked to a Grey that now is in human form, and while they've been here for millions of years, billions of years maybe, they are aware of the prison planet. It's more than the planet. It's like this part of the solar system is in like a penal colony, and it appears that the reptilians might be the dominating force right now on Earth. That's why we're having such draconian energies that are kind of dominating our consciousness right now. But we always have higher levels of consciousness. That's why we had the Buddha and the Christ and all these high level beings that come in here. And, you know, they're not non-interfering, right? They are putting their philosophies in here, and they are changing the dynamics, right? So we constantly do have intervention. So that part of the Federation thing is kind of, you know, BS. No, we get intervention all the time. We have all these beings that have visited all these people all along, and they plant their seeds and they wake people up. And what we need to do is decide, because we're all equal, all species, all beings, we're all equal. These are just avatars that we're choosing to come in and have these experiences. And often at night we recognize each other, we remember each other, we know each other on a soul level. It doesn't matter what form. It's like driving a car. Oh, today you're driving a Volkswagen, tomorrow you're driving a Mercedes-Benz, right? So it's just like we're in these different forms. The hierarchy is artificial. It's part of this Earth reality, but when you're in space, you know, we're all just hanging out as equals. We see each other as souls, and we're doing active trade. It's really complicated. I don't have it 100% what's going on, but I know I've been at the highest level, and I've been at the lower level little different meetings about what are we going to do about this, that, solving problems. But we can wake up tomorrow, right? Any one of us can say, end game, but we like the game. See, when you get to the point where you realize, I'm enjoying this game. I get to pick that I'm a Republican, a Democrat, an independent, I'm what race, color, creed, what form, because we keep coming back. You know, as humans, we die, we keep coming back. So on some level, we like the game. And I don't think we're going to blow ourselves up. We're probably going to take our awareness to space. We already have part of humanity is in space. They've been in space all along. So 50 years from now, we're going to look back at this time and we're going to go, how primitive our thoughts were and how little we knew. But we're waking up, and I don't know if we're going to have disclosure, like, you know, them beaming down. I've had them land on my front porch, literally. They didn't land, though. They said, we're not going to land the ship. Your building's too weak, but we'll hover right above it. So in broad daylight. So I've had all these miracles, but it's like, when are you going to stop the games? And it's like, well, you're the one that's in the game. So once we realize that, we can end it. And we might decide to end it and go, oh, I'm going to go back into the game. Because it's the hottest game in existence right now. The human Earth game with all this stuff going on, this is where people take vacations to come here to be a part of this. Does that make sense?
Sure. Incarnation is a choice.
And visiting. Sometimes we go in time travel. We go back in time. We can teleport and go anywhere. There's just like the movie Avatar, which I guess is coming out next year now. There's a part of us can sit in a virtual room and say, I'm going to go in and be that being, and we get in there and we believe we are that until suddenly the game ends, or we're out, or we're dead, or whatever.
So, you mentioned unity consciousness, and you also mentioned God. So, how do you experience God, and what can you describe unity consciousness or God, or both? Either one, any of that.
You're asking, how do I experience God?
Yeah, you said you mentioned God earlier, and I was just wondering how you experience God, and if you do experience Him or her or it, that means that you're with that and not that, or maybe you're part of that, but also seeing it as separate. But I'm just curious how you experience it, and also I'm curious about unity consciousness. And also you mentioned earlier about maybe there is no death. I understand that, but there's the other side. There's when you're not in a body, you're a disincarnate spirit or you're something, and you're choosing to have another incarnation, or you decide to go on, or whatever you decide. You're in. How do I put this? You're still a separate awareness that's not unified with everything, unless you choose to go to that point in reality. But the way I understand it as a hypnotherapist, maybe you can speak differently, that, when you die, you get on the other side, and you can have any number of experiences, different types of experiences. If you go to the other side, as in beyond Earth, or you can hang out on Earth, or you can have a being come along. This is my own understanding from my own clients. You can have a being, a light being come to you, which is also a portal, give you some life reviews, and then you can decide, well, you can either have another incarnation or you're not, and then go on straight into another incarnation. And you haven't really gone anywhere off the Earth. You just went to the other side while still on the Earth, chose to have another incarnation, and went back into another body. And you didn't go through the light. You might have gone through a tunnel of light to get into your next body, but you didn't really go into the light like people generally think. But my point is that I'm trying to piece all this together and try to get some kind of larger understanding of how you understand the other side, B, God, and C, unity consciousness. I guess those are my questions.
Okay. That's
Simple
a big
stuff,
question.
huh? Simple stuff, right?
Well, I've had 8 near-death experiences. So 8 times I've gone on the other side.
Good. Awesome.
Yeah.
Go into your understanding of the other side, please.
Okay. So I had a very violent event when I was 4 years old, and it was an oral rape, and I found myself on the other side. I was dead as a doorknob. And I was met by my guides, and I was experiencing simultaneously many things. It's like we really have greater abilities. When we're in this 3D, we're kind of locked in this linear time. But when we're out of body, it was like we can see things, experience things on much greater levels. So I'm watching what's going on with my body, and I'm a 4-year-old, 5-year-old, somewhere between 4 or 5, and they're trying to revive me, but I'm dead because I just got killed, right? And so then they start showing me the guides. They said, well, here's what happens if you stay dead. I mean, you can go back in or you can stay here. What do you want to do? So they show me options. So if I stayed dead in one variation on this life, my dad went to jail because he killed the guy who killed me, right? He got mad, he killed him. And another one, my mother went to insane asylum because she went nuts because this guy killed me in front of her. And another one, my brother couldn't handle that his little baby sister died, and he ended up suiciding. And another one, my sister ended up suiciding. And I go, I can't do that to those people. And they said, well, here's what you do. And so I fixed my broken neck, and I reanimated my body. And when I came back in, they had tossed me to the side. They were just about to leave the room, call the police, and I just literally come popping up. I just stand up, and I got my hands raised, and I go, hi. And I think I was literally glowing because the energy was so high, that vibration, and I came in so fast, and it was like Christ glowing, and I'm glowing, and I scared them, and they they all screamed, and they ran out of the room, and it happened to be in this incident happened. It was hilarious. And this thing happened in my bedroom, so I just said, wow, look how I freaked everybody out. And so I felt exhaustion because I was reintegrating that energy and slowing down. And so I said, I got to go to sleep. So I crawled into bed. Now, I did have have lacunae, right? I didn't remember that because if I would have remembered that whole thing, I probably could have never trusted my mother. So, I had this subconscious memory until I got into therapy with my husband. And then I recalled the whole thing. And it was very good because it had been holding me back, not remembering this time I was murdered, right? But I had other times where I did remember everything consciously. My mother was acting out horribly. She should not have been raising a child. I was home alone with her a lot, and sometimes she strangled me. She pushed me down a flight of steps. She tried to drown me. She did all kinds of things, and I kept coming back in because it's like, no, it was my choice. I'm not going to be dead. But on the other side, it's just totally love, total healing. My sense of, I call it source. I don't like to use the word God because religions have twisted the concept of God and made it quite perverse. But the unity consciousness is like it's like swimming in a pure love. And there's total acceptance. There's no hierarchy. There's no dominance control. And I've gone to some planets which it catches you off guard. You go, this was a totally peaceful planet. There's not a negative thought or a judgment, because at that point you can sense everything, and it's shocking what a totally peaceful planet is like. And it's like, okay, I got to come back here because here we're full of judgments and criticisms and projections and it's my understanding, and the best way I can equate it to is like the Dr. Michael Newton Institute. Night Between Lives series of books. That's pretty close. I wouldn't apply 100% to anybody because everybody has their own unique experiences. I work with the dead. They come to me. My girlfriend killed herself. She came to me. She wanted me to help her with a demon that she called Maitreya. She said she was kind of worshiping Maitreya. And he was coming to her and saying, come to me, come to me. And so one day she did. She took all these pills, and she had been suffering from huge physical condition that nobody was able to cure. But and she'd been saving her pills so she could take her life because she was in too much pain. But she had a husband, and he was very distraught because she picked a fight and killed herself. So since I've always worked with the dead, and so, she comes to me, and she's dead, and she's there. This Maitreya keeps chasing me. She didn't even say it. She just showed me, and she was running, and it was like a nightmare. And so I couldn't figure out what to do for her. Every time I laid down to try to get some sleep, she was coming around, and she would come right into my face and go, and I'd wake up. So I was like, after 2 days, and I gotta get her to move on because this is hurting my body physically. I can't go for days on end without sleep. I'm going to get sick. So I finally figured it out by day 3, and I used the symbology of go to the light because I didn't know what it said. Go completely opposite from me. And when she went, first of all, there was a group of souls on the other side helping me, and they grabbed this demonic force that she had invited into her existence. And then she was running so fast, they grabbed her, and they just started hugging her and loving her and comforting her. So they helped her, and I go, thank you. And then I was able to, I wasn't, haunted anymore. And I have a friend that the same thing was happening to him. He said, what is going on with, I won't name her name, so-and-so. And I said, well, she's trapped with this guy. He goes, yeah, I see him too. What can we do? So, finally, when I did this, it was all telepathic, right? In my mind's eye. Or was I there in my etheric body? I'm not sure how it works. But somehow she was free. And then I talked to him, and he goes, yeah, she's done. I go, whew, that was hard. So, and I've had all kinds of people. I don't know why they come to me, but I ask them, I go, why are you coming to me? Like I had Michael Jackson, I had David Carradine, what was the woman that died the same day as Michael Jackson? one of the Charlie's Angels girls. Was it Farrah Fawcett? I had David Bowie. I had Prince, and then I had my neighbor. And I don't go to funerals anymore because they follow me home. And they wait till I'm sleeping and they come, and so it's like, no, I closed my shingle. I'm not working with the dead, but I usually do a little bit of therapy. I'm a therapist. I do some counseling. I help them to move on. But sometimes they bring me a gift. So David Bowie was upset that he was dead, so I kind of worked with him. Then Prince came.
Isn't everybody doesn't most people get upset when they first die, and then they realize, oh, there's all these options, and then they cheer up after that.
Well, Michael was very upset he was dead, but Prince was happy. He said, "Oh my God, this feels so wonderful." It was like he was dancing and singing, and he was so ecstatic. I didn't really pay attention to him in life. I knew he existed, but I didn't know his personality. I knew nothing about him on any level like that. And he said, "But I want to give you a gift." Because I asked him, "Why are you coming?" He says, "Because you can see me, and I'm just so happy that you can see me." And so let me give you a gift. So he brought around my bed, and I was able to wake up and call my husband. I go, honey, come here. And he came and sat beside me, and I said, "I don't know if you can see this, and I was describing everything that was going on, because, so he brought, Gene Roddenberry and Leonard Nimoy and George Harrison and John Lennon and, all these people that I love, through the years that are on the other side. And I was just so happy. I was like crying. And my mother and father, and my husband, mother and father. And I said, "Oh, there they are." And it was just, they were all smiling. They didn't talk to me, but they were just, sending me this loving energy. And then from the other side came my best female friend's husband, who had died. And he just walked in and he waved, and I'm going, wow, there really is life after death. And I had never seen him in 3D. I just knew of him. I've met her, but I didn't get to meet him before he passed. But, he was walking, and he had lost his leg to diabetes. So they get restored. Whatever that etheric body, they get restored.
Sure, of course.
And he was healthy.
Yeah, I've learned that from my own clients. So
yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about the other side.
Okay, so
through your near-death experiences, not necessarily the experience itself, but just what, how you got over there and that sort of thing, and how you got back. I'm not so much interested in that. I'm more interested in what you experienced over on the other side, the actual other side itself.
Personal experiences. I'm not there too long. I mean, I don't know what the time is, but the vibratory frequency of the other side is the same vibratory frequency of when I was on the ship and they showed me the timelines. So there's a certain vibratory frequency you can go into. But I don't think I went all the way, to the point where I can't come back. I was there as long as maybe 45 minutes, the episode when my neck was broken. My mother got angry and she strangled me and I was out of my body again. So I was over there again. And in that one, I didn't go through a life review. It was just an analysis of what can you do about the situation. You have a choice. You always have a choice to stay or come back. So I've been to that level. But from my understanding with the Michael Newton Institute work and I resonate with it, is that we have soul families. And I have been blessed to have met many of my soul family members. I've had physical relationships and fallen in love. And at some point we realized, no, that's not what we're supposed to do the entire life. And I met my twin flame in essence, my Sasha. He's very much me, in some kind of other half twin flame configuration. And I've been through. I can talk about this. I've been through the dimensions, so I do tantra work, and so I can go into this high ecstatic state where I awaken my kundalini, and the kundalini goes to my body, and then I'm outside of my crown chakra, and I'm flying through existence and through physical and on through the higher realm. So I didn't have to die to have that, but I've gone through the cosmos. And but I don't go to the dark side. I keep setting my intention when I'm going to do travel throughout the universe and dimensions that I've only gone 1 degree into the dark side of force, so to speak. And that's not real pleasant. There's a lot of discarnates there, and they're interdimensionals that are just they're struggling, they're suffering. So, I end up doing therapy with those people. But I've traveled through space with this technique of using Tantra and projecting into my, I guess, astral form. And I've traveled and I've met other species. And then I've done the process where I allow them to take over my voice. I channel them, kind of channeling them, but I never put aside my consciousness. I'm always in control. If I don't like what somebody's doing, I just shut them off and disconnect it. So I've talked to many species that way over the years. I encountered one time a library ship where it was like a slow travel between planets where people would get off and have experiences and come in, and everybody fed it was like the Akashic Records, but it was just the experiences that people had by meeting other cultures, or they had themselves, so they would all upload their experiences. So anybody who came on board the ship, they could tune in to, you could be Abraham Lincoln. You could tune in and be Abraham Lincoln by going into this immersion process and experience everything that he went through. And then, it was like a recreational thing. You could go and be all these people, and not just human beings, but other species and other planets. You could go literally be them for, whatever you wanted to do, the duration of your trip or something. And I thought that was very unique. So,
did you get a sense of who controlled that ship? Who that ship belonged to?
I think at the higher level, it's like consensus. What we did when we assembled the building to have our 100,000 being meeting was we all co-created it, and when we left, it was gone. And George, what's his name? George Catasilis from Australia, he said the same thing. He said a lot of times when you're meeting, the people who are meeting create the physical appearance for the convenience of the meeting, but when you're gone, it doesn't, because it's you're just pulling together matter with your mind, and you could have it look like whatever you want. So it's kind of like a consensus reality. We're going to have a temple with columns, right? Or we're going to meet in a beautiful
I see what you're
space
saying.
in nature.
I got it. So a bunch of different beings decided this is something we'd like to do, and you did it. And once it's done, you can dissolve it, and it's no more.
Right. So a lot of that on the dead realm is, most of the universe is conscious. This is the simulation game where you can go in and go unconscious and you can kill each other. Right? We can't kill each other when we're sensing each other. We can't, because we feel too much. So we come into this skin encapsulated self sense. The skin is thick. We are thick skinned. So this thick skin prevents us from feeling each other completely. That's why we're not totally telepathic. Our telepathy is different than reptilians have pure telepathy. There's nothing left you can hide from them. That's why a lot of people can't be around a reptilian without dropping dead. I have a very good reptilian friend, and he taught me how to do his telepathy without dying. But he wouldn't even begin to teach me if I hadn't evolved to a certain level as a soul, because we're always in a symbiotic relationship with our form, right? And so we have a duty when we come into form to protect and preserve, and we have an agreement with the form to have what's called a lifetime, right? And to not abuse it. And so if you're really honoring your contract with your form, you want to do things to protect it. So the aliens don't want to hurt our form because they know we're in a relationship with our form. So they do everything to make sure that we don't drop over dead and that we complete our contracts with our forms that we agreed to inhabit. So that's hard to explain, but the Dr. Michael Newton Institute research explains how we're in a symbiotic relationship with our forms. So life beyond this 3D existence, which we might call the dead zone or higher vibratory frequencies, is very complex, but most of it is kind and loving. That's what's we've agreed to come in where we're doing fights with each other, and part of that is to evolve consciousness. If we can get the lesson of appearing to be separate, and we can learn how to love each other, even we're constantly creating boogeymen, right? We're constantly creating enemies and self and not self and self and apparent other. If we can, at the end of that game, love each other, then it's kind of like the veil will fall, the Wizard of Oz, its curtain comes down, and we will be ascending or enlightened or conscious all at once. It could be a point of reaching critical mass, and then we'll go conscious, and then it'll be like the hologram on Star Trek, and it starts to fizzle. That was 2 weeks ago. I woke up. I said, "Honey, the hologram is dissolving. What are we going to do when we realize we're on the holodeck?" This has all been an illusion. So that might happen any day now. But that was interesting. They finally showed me that this is a hologram, and it's dissolving.
So do you believe in?
What do you think?
Do you have a? How do I put this? Do you consider yourself a new ager in the sense that, there's different concepts. There's the 3D, and then people talk about 4D, 5D, 6D, and all these different levels, dimensional levels above this one. And the concept, as you obviously know it, is that we're evolving to a high, 4D, 5D, and you keep going up higher levels till you're back to unity or whatever. Do you think that's correct or not correct?
It's really hard for human beings to put these concepts into words. We're so limited by these. Our language has limitations built into it. We don't even have, she has he in it, right? This is part of the babbling of humans to keep us from being aware of the totality of existence. So a lot of times I just experience what is, and so I try to symbol it or put it into human language, and it's like dimensions, higher, lower, hierarchical. Those are just ways for humans to verbalize what they're experiencing. But I don't really, when I'm past this realm, experience hierarchy or patriarchy or any of the archies where one is better than the other. It's we're all equal, we're all one, that it's, we're experiencing these as different vibratory frequencies or dimensions, but that's just our human self trying to explain what we're experiencing. If we kind of do as good as John did in Revelations, right? It's like we're trying to explain it, and John in Revelations, we don't know what he was saying, right? What was he describing? The four horsemen of the apocalypse? That's what humans are. We're like John in Revelations trying to describe, time travel and atomic bombs. And so I think it's just the beautiful realms of existence that we experience, and we can move into whatever we desire to experience, like walking through air, right? There's no resistance. It's us making it all up. We're making this up. And where do we make it up from? Well, it's already there. We're pulling it together in different forms and different sequences and different combinations, but ultimately we're making it all up. So you asked earlier, what is God? I think we have the little gods that were created by other higher evolved humanoid and other species.
All right.
Good. God is actually source. We are God. You're God, I'm God, we're all God. We're unified consciousness, and we've decided to subparse and fractal down into these realms so we can have experiences, so we have something to do, we can learn, grow, and evolve, and we have other people to talk to. Edgar Cayce said God was lonely, so he split himself. I mean, Edgar Cayce has a wonderful explanation of the creation of existence. So, yeah, we were lonely, so we made an apparent parent X outside of ourselves, else, self and else, and we're just all one.
So I have a million other questions to ask you, but my wife wants me to take the dogs out.
Sure.
So you know how that goes. The wife always gets what she wants.
Yeah, we can wrap this up. There's a wonderful Om Namah Shivaya. That means everything is God. And
10 minutes.
She says I can have 10 minutes, so I guess 10 minutes. So
let's wrap this up.
The goddess has granted me 10 minutes.
Well, she knows.
124. I guess we'll stop at 134. So, okay, so we're all God having human experiences. I kind of understand that. So have you say you've been, dimensional beings, and you've been on other dimensions. Give me a taste of the other dimensions or the dimensional beings, either one, whatever you feel is the most interesting thing to talk about.
Okay.
Or both.
Let me see where to go. Or both, right. Well, I guess I'll pull it down. They're all interdimensional. So, you can have your gray. One day I was waking up to the sun. I have a big A-frame house that overlooks Haleakala and the ocean and near Maui, and it always wakes me up, and the sun's coming up, and I feel something on the other side of my bed. I look over there. There's this gray. It's just it's about 4.5 feet tall, and it's a big owl. I looked at it and I go, oh, come on, really? And it shapeshifted into a gray. And so, and it just popped in, and when we were done talking, it popped out. And we had a very nice, I can't even remember the conversation. I'm going to have to, I think I wrote it in my diary. I have to go look it up. Oh, I did write it. I wrote it up on, I put it up on, it's an article. I used to write up my experiences. I've gotten lazy about that. So, and this gray kind of summarized it to me. And it was androgynous. I don't know if it's a he or she. It was just, it was saying, that I was blocking contact all along. And that the way they can contact me in 3D on this earth plane is when I finally got comfortable with that idea, and I didn't stop it. So there I was. I was kind of in between worlds, just arriving, but I was fully awake, my eyes were open. And I remember Whitley Strieber saying that he had to learn how to relax and be comfortable so that he could sit opposite. And he was sitting opposite of a little kind of Buddha being. He came down from his upstate New York cabin. He was in the loft bedroom, right? And he sensed something down in the living room below, and he went down there and he saw this little being there, and it took him quite a while before it was able to get all the way down the stairs, and eventually he went and sat opposite it. It was sitting there in lotus and meditating, and he went and just quietly meditated with it. And so this Gray said, "Congratulations, you've arrived." And that was the second time I saw a Gray, like in my room at the hotel, but this was like at home. And basically anytime I need to or want to, I could do that, but I had been blocking it all along. So the Grays and all the other beings, they're complicated like humans, but most of them are just pure divine love. And they look at us as their children, and they are holding space for us to evolve and grow and become conscious. And they're helping us right now because they've been given the go, or they've agreed to go and do more interference on a higher level. And I think that's why things like your show with me right now and all these shows and we're all talking about it now. Like when I was a little girl, when I was 4, nobody was talking about it. Betty and Barney Hill hadn't even spoken up or had their experiences yet. So now we are Disclosure, and we're talking about it. And I really appreciate you for calling me and doing this show today. Thank you so much for having me on.
Well, I appreciate you being on the show. I've done done at least one really good show so far, and one of the guys with the opinions, and I really appreciate you being on the show. And if there's anything you want to promote before we get off, we've still got about 6 minutes, but if there's anything you want to say about what you're doing or what you want to promote or what how awesome it is to be in Hawaii or anything you want to talk about that benefits you, feel free.
Well, right now I'm focused on, I'm going to write my book. Thank you for encouraging me to get that going again. I'm looking at my notes as I pulled up the screen because I do have to get this done, and COVID is a perfect time because I'm still at home. But I am working more with people. I'm started to do, I'm doing webinars. I'm doing Zoom broadcasts, showing my old face, which is okay. I am what I am. And I work on a very limited basis with a few clients doing, primarily I like to do these regressions to help you uncover your stories. So if anybody's interested, you can go to Aquarian, AQUARIAN radio.com and schedule your appointment, or you can just watch any of I have a couple thousand broadcasts and YouTubes. I've got most of the links up there. I have another site called schoolofcounseling.org, and there's some of my services. I'm not out of retirement full time, so it's just going to be very limited here and there, and that's kind of to help us keep the roofs over our head because we're all in COVID and the money's really gotten weird. I go to these civilizations and they don't use money, so sometimes money has never jived with me, and it's like, what? We gotta, it doesn't seem right because a lot of the worlds I live in, there's no money. My husband has a wonderful site. He and I are both Anunnaki researchers. It's called Enki Speaks, ENKISPEAKS.com, and he's got about 10 years of research on there. And we have, if you go to Amazon.com and you put in Janet Kira Lessin or Sasha Lessin or Alex Lessin, we've got 10 books we've managed to publish so far, and we put a lot of work and love into them. So if you want to support our work by buying a book, that would be great too, because that all keeps the lights on and pays for all these computers and broadcasting systems. Because we'd like to talk to you and interact. So if you want to ask me a question or email me, just email me at Aquarian Radio, AQUARIAN Radio @gmail.com. If you want to come on my show, drop me a line. there's probably ways that we can all support each other and help us not only feed ourselves but elevate our consciousness to the highest level. And the sooner we wake up, we're going to have the end to all diseases, the end to aging, which is a disease. We'll have transportation, teleportation, time travel, star travel, space travel. There's all these technologies that they have shown us in science fiction, starting with the campaign in 1951 with The Day the Earth Stood Still, through Star Trek and through today. Yes, a lot of that science fiction is science fact, and we just have repression by the government. So vote for people that want to have disclosure and open up this so that we level the playing field and we're all equal and we all get to live long lives, like Spock said, and prosper. So I think that's the end of what I have to say, unless you have another question.
Oh, always got a million. We got 4 minutes before my wife decides it's over. So you're fascinated by the Anunnaki, obviously. And you say the reptilians are sort of running the show here on Earth. So were they one and the same, or are they two different races?
That's always been complex. It might be like the Earth in the future, and they'll say, like America, we say we're all Americans, right? But there's different species and races and colors and creeds in American. I think the Anunnaki are humanoid. I'm not sure what the reptilian thing is. It's kind of like when we have the victors of war, the people who win the battles or the wars, they get to write the story. So I don't have the answer to a lot of this. I don't know it all. I'm just in the mystery like the rest of us. But on a feeling-based level, from when I met the 1,000 Anunnaki under Johnson Atoll, and they were all humanoid. They in fact are like so beautiful that each and every one of them could be on the cover of a magazine, times 100. They're just absolutely gorgeous humanoid beings. I mean, they don't have any disease. They're fully conscious. They use 100% of their minds, and they're just very beautiful beings. Now, the reptilians, they seem to be a different species. I've met reptilians, too, and they just, not only do they look different, but they have different energies and they have different telepathic abilities. The reptilian is total telepathy. There's not a part of you can hide. You can hide yourself a little bit from the Anunnaki, and their telepathy is different, and the grace, yeah.
So you think that reptilians are running the show here?
That's what I've heard, but maybe they're being led to believe they're running the show. But apparently there's a federation that meets. A.R. Borden talked about it. Joanne Richards' husband, Mark Richards, talks about these meetings, and they have all these different species, and when they meet, they're all equal. So confusing, conflicting stories. But what I've encountered in my council meetings is that the beings that meet there's no hierarchy. They're all level. So, like I said, this is a simulation. So that might be the parameters of the game, right? This is a Game of Thrones, and we've come in to be humans, and some people are, this side, that side, but they're, it's just a game. So maybe in the game, the reptilians think they're in charge.
It's been a pleasure hearing you talk, and I will send you a link to directly to your recording, and I will keep up with you, and we will try to help each other as much as possible in the future. And thank you very much for being on my show.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you once again, and much love and blessings and aloha to everybody.
Same here. Have a good day.
You too.